What happens to us after death, and who do we encounter in the spiritual world? According to the theory of evolution of consciousness, TEC, a person does not cease to exist after physical death. Although the physical body perishes, consciousness continues to exist. The spiritual body, which contains the entire psychological structure of the personality, separates from the body and continues to live in the spiritual world. This spiritual body is not just some vague energy. It is a clearly defined structure in which the person's subjective consciousness resides, meaning the psyche composed of several inner parts, one of which is the ego, the core of personality. All of this remains intact in the spiritual body after death and continues to exist in the spiritual realm, the only difference being that it is no longer connected to the physical body or the material world. If during life the objective consciousness, the soul, was awakened, it also remains present in the spiritual body. But even then, it is still a human soul. The person remains a human being until they have fully completed the developmental path through the 4 phases of human consciousness. Only then is the spiritual body ready to transition into a new form of existence, beyond the human. The spiritual world is not populated only by people who have left their bodies. There are also other spiritual beings, some on a lower level of consciousness than humans, some on a higher level. Among them are beings we often perceive as guides, angels, or inspiring presences. They are not human, but they operate according to the same laws of the evolution of consciousness, only on a higher level of awareness. There are also spiritual entities that exist on a lower level of consciousness than humans. A person does not dissolve into some abstract ether after death. They continue to exist as a conscious spiritual structure, only without the limitations of the physical body. How and when do we perceive the spiritual world? Although we often believe we live in a purely material world, TEC teaches that human beings simultaneously exist in the spiritual world, because the material reality, or the third dimension, 3D, is only a part of the broader spiritual reality, the 4th dimension of existence. This means we do not go to the spiritual world after death. We have always been in it. Our spiritual body never leaves that dimension. The only difference is that, while we are incarnated, our consciousness experiences reality through the senses of the physical body, which are focused solely on the material aspect of existence. That's how the illusion arises that only what we see exists. But reality does not change, only our focus does. In certain moments, that focus relaxes. For example, in the state between wakefulness and sleep, in certain spaces with different energetic structures, or under the influence of a spiritual entity. In those moments, consciousness once again becomes able to perceive what has always surrounded it, the spiritual world. Then it perceives something that does not belong to the material world, and this perception is not imaginary or symbolic. It is real. And it is experienced as a real event. These experiences can vary. Some people see beings, others hear voices. Some simply feel a presence or receive knowledge that doesn't originate from themselves. But it's very important to know that not every spiritual being that appears has good intentions. Some entities are on a lower level of development, including spiritual remnants of deceased individuals who have not completed their own evolution. They often present themselves as something higher, offering love, missions, or guidance. But in essence, they obscure clarity and block the evolution of consciousness. That's why experiencing the spiritual world is not in itself proof of spiritual maturity. The only real indicator of advanced consciousness is the ability to discern what is what. Seeing alone means nothing, unless one understands why something appeared and what it means for the continued development of the self. True maturity is not about what you see, but whether you know what you're seeing and whether it expands your awareness or limits your spiritual growth. In the upcoming videos in this playlist, we will talk about concrete experiences from the spiritual world, or as some call it, the 4th dimension, and we will interpret them through the lens of the theory of evolution of consciousness. We'll explain how to recognize contact with spiritual beings, how to distinguish what is real, what is projection, and what is manipulation, and what it all means for the development of human consciousness. If you heard any terms in this video that were unclear, you can find full explanations in the dedicated playlist, Theory of Evolution of Consciousness, where we go in depth on all key concepts, what the psyche is, what the ego is, when the soul awakens, and how consciousness evolves. If you have a personal experience you'd like to share, or a question, or even just a reflection, feel free to leave a comment. And if you found this content meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can keep expanding our understanding of what lies beyond the material world, of what almost every person has felt or glimpsed at least once, but chooses to keep silent about, just to avoid being called crazy.